right. Welcome back to the Draft Podcast, part of the Gem City Sports Podcast Network. I'm your host, Paul Adamaszek. Whether you're here for deep draft insight or just looking for an excuse to avoid work for 30 minutes, I appreciate you tuning in. Now, I know I said last week I'd be breaking down a defensive position this week, but I've decided to call an audible. With the NFL Combine coming up next week, I want to wait and get those all-important 40-yard dash times, bench press reps, and the official height, weight, hand size, ankle circumference measurements before diving into that side of the ball. So instead, I'm shifting gears and taking a big picture look at 3 AFC teams that need to nail this offseason. Pittsburgh Steelers, Cleveland Browns, and the Buffalo Bills. Now, these guys each have big questions to answer. Who's staying? Who's going? Who they should target in the draft and free agency? Will the Steelers finally solve their quarterback situation? Can the Browns keep their defense together without Myles Garrett? And how do the Bills reload without wasting another year of Josh Allen's prime? Well, I'm breaking it all down right now. All right, let's start with the Pittsburgh Steelers and where they stand heading into the offseason. 2024 was, let's just say, classic Steelers. They gritted their way to another winning season, keeping that Mike Tomlin streak alive. But when it came to real playoff contention, they just didn't have the horses. The offense was sluggish, the quarterback situation was a mess, and while the defense did its best to keep them in games, they were on the field way too much. Now, looking ahead, it's clear where the Steelers need help. Quarterback is a massive question mark. Do they ride with Justin Fields? Do they bring in a vet? Do they take a swing in the draft? Wide receiver is another glaring issue. George Pickens is talented, but they need another legitimate weapon. And then there's the running game. Jaylen Warren showed flashes. Najee Harris ran for 4 straight 1,000-yard seasons, but Pittsburgh seems primed to send him packing. Whether it's a fresh set of legs in the draft or a complementary piece in free agency, Pittsburgh needs more explosiveness in the backfield. Defensively, they could use some reinforcements in the secondary, especially with Minkah Fitzpatrick battling injuries last season. So how do they fix it? Free agency could help, but the draft will be key. So let me take a step back. I've got 4 different areas that I identified for each of the 3 teams that I mentioned a few moments ago: the Steelers, Browns, and Bills, and I'll do them in that order. I've got 4 different areas specifically that they need to work on, and I'm going to give you sort of the current status of that situation and a couple potential solutions, be it free agency or the draft. So starting with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and starting with the number one situation that I feel needs to be addressed would be the quarterback situation. So currently, both quarterbacks from the roster last season, Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, are entering free agency. Russell Wilson's departure is all but confirmed. He's probably gone. A lot of Steelers fans like Justin Fields, but his return remains uncertain at this point. Is he going to get a bag somewhere else? Does somebody see those 6 games he played and they offer him too much money for what Pittsburgh wants to pay him? They're going to make him a contract offer, but they're going to make him a team-friendly contract offer. We know. So a couple potential solutions to the quarterback situation. First, let's look at free agency. They can explore veteran quarterbacks, such as maybe like a potential trade for like Matthew Stafford. I've heard that that's possible. A couple of different teams have been reportedly in on Stafford. The Steelers are one of them. And of course, you can look through free agency. Options may include Daniel Jones, Sam Darnold, Aaron Rodgers, if that's where you want to go. Some different options there. Daniel Jones, I mentioned that to one person. The word tire fire, or the phrase tire fire, was thrown around. So I don't know how Steelers fans feel about that. Sam Darnold had a great year with the Vikings. He's going to get a bag. Do the Steelers want to be the team that gives him that bag? Aaron Rodgers, he's 41, going to be 42 next season. Wasn't great with the Jets. 2 years with them, 0 playoff appearances. But maybe in the right situation. Listen, nobody's good at the Jets. It wasn't just Aaron. Do the Steelers want to take a shot on a 41-year-old quarterback? All right, so that's kind of your free agency. Let's take a look at the draft. You could consider mid-round talents like Will Howard, perhaps, from Ohio State, Jackson Dart from Ole Miss. How about Quinn Ewers from Texas? If you want to know what I think about all of those guys, you can go back to episode 2. We broke down the best quarterbacks in this upcoming draft class. So that's called a callback. All right. Episode 2, the quarterbacks. I think it was called Heroes or Headaches. Will Howard, backup most likely. Jackson Dart, he is the ultimate unknown. Could be great. Maybe not so much. A lot of bad film. Quinn Ewers from Texas looked the part for a lot of reasons. Maybe doesn't have the huge physical upside, but maybe something that Arthur Smith can work with. Just turn around, hand the ball off. So that's the quarterback situation. Place for improvement number 1, I guess is what we'll say. Second position that's going to need improvement this offseason, running back. Currently, Najee Harris is set to enter free agency after 4 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons. He was the 22nd overall pick just a few years ago by the Steelers. So there's a first-round running back that after that first contract, they might say bye-bye. And then you've got Jaylen Warren, who is a restricted free agent, definitely a candidate for retention. I don't know about a 3-down back or a perennial all-pro, but I think he's worth a roster spot. He at least proved that much last year. So some potential solutions in the running back room. Take a look at free agency. Can we evaluate available running backs to replace Harris if he departs? How about J.K. Dobbins? How about Aaron Jones? Dare I say Nick Chubb? Browns fans, calm down. He's not gone yet. Possible replacements for Najee Harris. You're sort of looking at the Thunder to Jaylen Warren's Lightning, right? You want a bigger back, the between the tackles runner. And I think all those guys fit the bill. Each have their own bugaboos, reasons for them entering free agency to begin with. But hey, they're proven commodities in this league and might be worth 1-year rentals. Let's take a look at the draft. Guys who probably aren't 1-year rentals. Once again, targeting power runners. Ollie Gordon II from Oklahoma State, I love. Quinshon Judkins from Ohio State fits the bill pretty well for the Steelers. And I'm going to say Cam Skattebo from Arizona in the mid to late rounds. Don't need to target a first-round running back again like they did with Harris. Maybe search that 2 to 5, and you can get some production in the running back room. So number 1, quarterback. Number 2, running back. Number 3, oh man, we got to address the wide receiver core. The 2024 season showcased an underwhelming performance from the receiving unit in Pittsburgh. Trade rumors surrounding Deebo Samuel with the Steelers as potential suitors. That may heat up. That may get interesting. Other potential solutions in free agency. Deebo Samuel is a great one. Maybe you throw the bag at Chris Godwin, or maybe a guy like Stephon Diggs, who had a 1-year contract in Houston to bolster the receiving core. Godwin is going to get a boatload of money wherever he goes. Even if he stays in Tampa Bay, he's going to get a boatload of money. So it's one of those, how much money do you want to spend on the position? Do you want to pay number 1 wide receiver money, or do you just try to pay high-end number 2 money and you're kind of left with Pickens as your number 1? I mentioned Stephon Diggs. Some people might have swallowed their gum there for a moment. I apologize if that happened to you. But Mike Tomlin and the Steelers, they've handled diva receivers in the past. Just saying. If you're looking for more of a draft angle in the wide receiver room, considering prospects such as Xavier Restrepo from Miami fits the bill. Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State has been linked to the Pittsburgh Steelers for feels like 6 months now. Maybe even Matthew Golden from Texas in the 2nd round is another guy who might fit what Pittsburgh wants to do in offensively under Arthur Smith. Quarterback, running back, wide receiver. We get to position number 4 for the Steelers that they need to address this offseason. The defensive backfield. Currently, the secondary is going to require upgrades to enhance that pass defense. Front 7 looks very good. The secondary was patchwork. It looked pretty good for most of the year, but once one guy went down, it got bad quick, didn't it? So if you look at free agency, maybe pursue a trade. Established talents like DJ Reed and the New York Jets, Shavarius Ward from San Francisco, maybe Asante Samuel Jr. from the Los Angeles Chargers. Interesting options there to add to the back end in Pittsburgh. Looking toward the draft, this might be where you have some first-round consideration. Azariah Thomas from Florida State, Jahdae Barron from Texas, Shavon Revel Jr. from East Carolina, all fit the bill. all would be day one walk-in players on the back end for Pittsburgh. So the Steelers have some big choices. Fix the offense, reload the defense, or just let TJ Watt do the whole damn thing. Either way, this draft is huge for them. We'll see what they do. Now on to the Browns, a team that had a Super Bowl dreams but got a reality check instead. Let's talk about how they get back on track. 2024 was a mess. The defense wasn't as bad as the record. Myles Garrett was a one-man wrecking crew, but the offense, woof. Deshaun Watson was either injured or ineffective. The offensive line completely fell apart. And to top it off, they traded away Amari Cooper, leaving their wide receiver room looking like a lost and found bin. So what's next? For starters, they need a real plan at quarterback because banking on Watson staying healthy hasn't worked so far. The offensive line needs reinforcements, and they desperately need a legit wide receiver one. Defensively, they could use some help at linebacker and on the interior defensive line, but the real focus has to be fixing that offense. It's put up or shut up time for Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry in Cleveland. So how do they fix it? 4 keys. Number 1, offensive line reinforcement. Currently, the offensive line faced inconsistencies in 2024, particularly at the left tackle position. So we're looking at potential solutions, maybe in free agency. It's a guard-heavy free agent class. Trey Smith out of Kansas City, Mekhi Becton out of Philadelphia, another guy who's going to get a bag. Tevin Jenkins from Chicago. About Cam Robinson from Minnesota, probably the top-rated tackle in this free agency class. The top-rated tackle is going to get big money every year regardless. So Cam Robinson may be an expensive hole, patch, but he would fill a hole. If you go to the draft instead for the offensive line, considering offensive tackle prospects in the early rounds to develop long-term stability. I'm thinking guys like Gray Zabel out of North Dakota State, Marcus Mabeau from Purdue, Josh Savanaya out of Arizona, who played right tackle in the Senior Bowl, looked really, really good there. The offensive line, you need 5 guys. And honestly, the Browns could use pretty much a guy at all 5. So just draft somebody up front, plug a hole. So that's number 1. Number 2, how about the defensive line? Stability. Uncertainty surrounding Myles Garrett's future with the team. Mike Hall Jr., second-round pick last year, needs to take the next step. So some potential solutions. We'll look in free agency. Chase Young on the edge, more of a run defender than the high-end pass rusher we all thought he was going to be when he was picked real high in the draft a couple of years back. But he's a solid player. He's been productive at a couple of different teams. How about Khalil Mack? He's on the back end of his career for sure, but he did have a really nice playoff game. And while he considered retirement, he did say he wants to come back for more. So he may stay with the Chargers, chase the dream again, but technically he is a free agent, so you might be able to get him cheap. Hassan Reddick is also a free agent. You want to talk about a guy with fresh legs. He didn't play a snap last year, refused to play for the Jets. He's back on the market. And then how about a guy like Josh Sweat? I know you recognize the name if you watch the Super Bowl. He's going to be a guy who's going to collect a bag as well. He's going to be big free agent dollars, whether he stays in Philadelphia or goes elsewhere. That's going to be another high-priced free agent that the Browns may have to pull the trigger on. In the draft, now this is kind of where it gets good. I'm not going to do a mock draft just yet. Like I said, I want to see the combine and all that, but the Browns sit at number 2 right now. Abdul Carter at number 2 could be an absolute home run. You never want to lose a Myles Garrett, but it could ease the sting if you're able to just insert another freak of nature on the edge after the departure of Myles. I'm just saying it's not ideal, but if you're going to lose your best defensive player, might as well replace him with your future best defensive player. It makes sense. So number 1, offensive line. Number 2, defensive line. Number 3, wide receiving core. Need to be enhanced, to say the least. Currently, the receiving unit lacks depth and consistent playmaking ability. Eli Moore was a dud. Jerry Jeudy is a nice piece, but he's more well-suited for a number 2 than he is as a true number 1 receiver. So we're looking at potential solutions. Free agency solutions. I'm not looking at high end for the Browns. How about Rondale Moore out of Atlanta now? high draft pick out of Purdue, running back, wide receiver, has a little versatility there. How about DJ Chark out at the Chargers? Had a nice early career, started with the Panthers, down with the Jaguars, and now went to the West Coast, and he was kind of forgotten about. He's back on the market. How about Tyler Boyd? Played last year in Tennessee. You remember Tyler Boyd. Really good third receiver with the Bengals. Good slot player. Clairton, Pennsylvania, born and raised. One of the best players to come out of Western Pennsylvania. Always been a Tyler Boyd fan. How about Zach Pascal? Played in Arizona last year. Former Colt. Nice edge presence. Good in the run game. So those are kind of your free agent options at receiver. How about the draft? Luther Burden III from Mizzou. Fast. Big. Play on the outside. How about Jack Beck, TCU, Senior Bowl MVP. Not a really flashy player, but catches everything, and he defines the word grit. And how about maybe Jaden Higgins, kind of a mid to late round guy out of Iowa State, one of the 2 fastest players at the Senior Bowl. Once again, Combine coming up. We'll see that 40 time officially, but Higgins, he can fly. So number 1, offensive line, number 2, defensive line, and number 3, we said receiver. So 4th and finally, the quarterback position. Let's assess it. Currently, speculation about pursuing a high-value quarterback acquisition. That's kind of the way it's going to be in Cleveland for the next couple of months. Potential solutions. If we start with free agency, maybe we just stick with Jameis. It's not great. I understand that's not ideal. It's probably not what Browns fans want to hear. Has some familiarity with the offense. Big number potential. Maybe if he goes into the season knowing he's the number 1 guy, you get a little bit more out of him early on. He's able to limit some of the mistakes. By the time he gets on the field, the Browns are already in a hole. He's kind of playing behind the 8 ball. Maybe he tries to force things too much. You could do a lot worse than Jameis Winston. How about Kirk Cousins? Maybe he's the guy that comes to the rescue. He's going to come with a high price tag, but for a 1-year rental, once again, you could do a lot worse. And I'll mention it again, could Cleveland be the Daniel Jones reclamation project area? I don't know. Daniel Jones, again, I'm just comparing it to the albatross that is Watson. You could do a lot worse. Draft prospect-wise, it's not a great year to draft quarterback outside of really high. Now, if Cam Ward happens to fall to 2, I'm sprinting to the podium. Quarterback solved. Maybe maybe Travis Hunter goes number 1. Maybe the Tennessee Titans really love Abdul Carter. He goes number 1. If Cam Ward falls to 2, he should be the Cleveland Browns starting quarterback next year, bar none. Too many other needs to go QB outside of those top prospects. Shadur won't play in Cleveland. So if it's not Cam Ward, I pick a guy late and I try to find a veteran. Needless to say, the Browns have work to do, whether it's finding a real wide receiver 1, fixing the offensive line, or just crossing their fingers that Watson magically turns back the clock to 2021. Either way, this offseason is critical. Now let's head up to Buffalo, where the Bills are dealing with their own set of problems. They've been a contender for years, but with an aging roster and key departures looming, is their Super Bowl window starting to close? So what needs to change? First off, they need a legit running back. James Cook improved, but Josh Allen is still the focal point of that run game. I think Joe Brady would like that to change. And they could really use another weapon on the outside for Josh Allen. Defensively, a more consistent pass rush and depth at cornerback wouldn't hurt either. Buffalo has been knocking on the Super Bowl door for years, but if they don't make some key moves this offseason while the window is still open, they might just stay stuck in the hallway. So 4 areas that the Buffalo Bills should address this offseason. Number 1, they need to make a wide receiver acquisition. Currently, the Bills' offense lacked a true number 1 receiver, impacting their postseason success, obviously. Now, they tried with Amari Cooper, but he was mostly a dud. They also tried with Keon Coleman, but he looked out of place sometimes, probably a little bit overdrafted. Some potential solutions, and we'll start with free agency. Perhaps re-signing Cooper. He is a free agent. More time, maybe a whole offseason may make him a more valuable piece to this offense, but the price has to be right, especially showing what he showed at the end of last season. Maybe they back up the Brinks truck for Chris Godwin. I don't know. If you're going to spend big on a position, it might as well be a position that helps your all-pro, all MVP, right? Everything, Josh Allen. If you look to the draft, you're going to have to target a top wide receiver talent in the early rounds to develop a long-term solution at the position. I'm thinking Isaiah Bond out of Texas, super speedster, although he lacks a little bit of size. Emeka Egbuka, another one I mentioned out of Ohio State, another speedster, little better size, but both guys can play on the outside, which is basically what Buffalo needs at this point. So number one, wide receiver. Number two, need some defensive line reinforcement. They need some bolstering, particularly at defensive tackle, to enhance the run defense and interior pass rush. We all know about Ed Oliver. Jordan Phillips is 32. Daquan Jones is 33. Austin Johnson is 30. They had a couple of young guys on the roster last year, didn't make any impact whatsoever. I think that's a place that they need to look, if not early in the draft, definitely a position to consider. Some draft prospects I would consider. How about defensive tackle Kenneth Grant, 340 pounds out of Michigan? Now, I'm not talking about his running mate, Mason Graham, who's going to be a top 10 pick. Kenneth Grant, a unique blend of size, versatility, and high motor, make him an ideal fit for the Bills' defense. Also, picking down where they are, Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M, freaky. At 290 pounds, the guy moves like he's 240. And another chess piece that you can play with along the defensive line. So wide receiver, interior defensive line. Number three for the Buffalo Bills, running back. The running game last season lacked consistency, necessitating an upgrade in the backfield. Listen, Ray Davis had some nice moments, but he's a replacement level back. If you lost him and brought somebody else in, they'd be able to do about the same thing. He's good. He's not break the bank for. So let's look at some potential solutions. In free agency, boy, wouldn't hate to see Najee Harris in a Bills uniform. A complimentary back to James Cook, sort of the Thunder to James Cook's Lightning. A short yardage option, not named Josh Allen. It's kind of what we want. Brings experience to the Buffalo running back room. Or maybe J.K. Dobbins, if you're not looking to break the bank on Najee. Sort of the same energy. Brings the same cards to the table to pair with James Cook. And listen, Josh Allen is such a dangerous runner. I'm just trying to not run him as much. That's it. Still run, just maybe save it. Some draft prospects. Good place to look. Evaluating running back prospects in the early to mid rounds who can add explosiveness and versatility to the offense. I mentioned on last week's episode, Ollie Gordon II, and maybe if Buffalo really likes him, O'Marion Hampton at the end of the first round would be an absolute boon to that backfield. So that's the third one. We're on to number 4 for the Buffalo Bills. Currently, the defensive backfield requires depth and potential starters to enhance the pass defense. Some potential solutions in free agency. First, let's start off by re-signing DeMar Hamlin and cornerback Rasul Douglas to maintain stability and experience in the secondary. Before you get better, you have to not get worse. Bringing back starters will help. In the draft, drafting versatile defensive backs to develop talent and provide competition. I like guys like Xavier Watts, the safety out of Notre Dame. Siobhan Ravel Jr. out of Eastern Carolina might be there at the end of the first round. He'd probably be a top 10, top 12 pick if he didn't get injured. So that might be a real steal there at the end of the first round. And another guy that we're going to see next week at the Combine, Trey Amos out of Ole Miss. He's expected to run really, really well. So he's got boundary corner potential with like 4.25, 4.30 speed at 6'2". That'll be really, really good. The Bills need a true number one corner. So that's it. We did the Steelers, the Browns, and the Bills. That's a wrap on today's episode of the Draft Podcast. Hopefully you've got a clearer picture of what the Steelers, Browns, and Bills need to do this offseason. Whether they actually do it is another story. So now I want to hear from you. What's the one move your team has to make? A draft pick, free agent signing, or maybe just convincing their GM to log off Twitter? Hit me up on Twitter at RufusP88 and let me know. Next week, we're shifting gears to one of the biggest events of the draft season, the NFL Combine. We'll break down what to watch for, which players can boost their stock, and which 40-yard dash times are going to make Twitter explode. You don't want to miss it. I promise you. So make sure you're subscribed. That's all for today. Again, thanks for listening to the Draft Podcast. I'm Paul Adamaszek, and I'll see y'all Monday morning on Flagship City Sports Talk, 9 a.m. on 105.9 FM and TalkErie.com. Have a great day.